Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the special election that's happening today, December 2nd, in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. We'll be talking about my predictions for this race and what I'm expecting within the final day. The early vote numbers are in. We've got, obviously, Election Day ahead of us, but I feel comfortable making my final prediction. And this video is going to consist of a couple parts. First, I'm going to kind of go through the early vote data that we have. I'm going to talk about what that means. I'll talk about my expectations for today. And throughout both of those parts, I'm going to talk, obviously, a lot about the national environment and what all of that means. And then I'll offer you a pretty conclusive final prediction. So let's get right into it by looking at the early vote data. And this headline is correct. This is from votehub.com. Democrats are indeed punching above their weight. And the models done here by Zachary and Austin are really rigorous. They're just honestly very good. If you're into kind of the granular level stuff of what I do, and people who do this for a living and create algorithms at a level that I think is just really, really incredible. If you're interested in that, go check out votehub.com. But what he's saying here is absolutely right. Democrats in Tennessee are turning out at a higher rate than Republicans in their early vote data, from what we're seeing at least in that data. And obviously, that has been the trend for the past year or so since Trump's taken office. But what we can kind of see is that even taking persuasion out of account, blue precincts, even within the counties, are turning out higher than red precincts. And what the data shows here, this is just the model that is being run on VoteHub. If every precinct voted exactly as it did in 2024, Afton Bain, who is the Democratic nominee in this race, would be about 3.5 points ahead of Kamala Harris, even in the early vote. So, if you only had, if no one changed their mind and not taking into account potentially a lesser election day turnout for Republicans, you're already probably getting a 3.5 point swing in the direction of Democrats. Now, what that means is just that Democrats already have a bit of a baked-in turnout advantage, but we're not taking into account just the fact that it's likely this electorate will be more early vote heavy than 2024 was. In 2024, obviously, there was some early voting in that early vote electorate was more Democratic than the district as a whole. But on election day in 2024, we had a pretty big turnout, and that was very beneficial for Donald Trump, especially within this district, but basically everywhere. And so what might happen, today is we're going to get an election day turnout, but it's probably going to be smaller as a share of the total electorate than it was in 2024. So we might see an electorate where, as a piece of the pie, more votes were cast early than they were this year than they were a year ago. And so that is another advantage that Democrats have in this race, or at least marginal gain they're going to have. But that's not even being taken into account here. We're just saying that if you had if you ran the 2024 election with this electorate just based on the early vote data, you'd already see Democrats doing about 3.5 points better, according to the model created here by Zachary and the good people at VoteHub. And so what that means is that we're looking at an electorate that is early voting at a rate about 3 to 4 points more Democratic than it was in 2024. The estimated electorate is about Trump plus 5, which means that we're probably saying, okay, the 2024 electorate here was about Trump plus 8 or 9, probably in the middle of that in the early vote, and that because this early vote is about 3.5% just bluer, just purely, we're getting a Trump plus 5 electorate. Obviously, there is a range to this. It could be anywhere from Trump plus 14 to Harris plus nearly 3, which is worth noting, but it's probably going to be, just based on what I've read, I think this is the right estimate. We're going to probably be looking at an electorate that would have voted for Trump in 2024 by mid-single digits. And so that means that pretty clearly Republicans have a turnout advantage, right? Trump plus 5 early vote data suggests that the electorate that we're going to get is guaranteed to have voted for Trump. We are not going to see an electorate that is 22% bluer than November 2024. Which we have seen to a smaller extent, but we've seen in smaller elections where the electorate gets 15 to 20 points bluer. That is not happening here. And that's the first, I think, kind of big issue for Democrats here is that, yes, the electorate is going to be more favorable to them. And, just based on the early vote data, election day turnout is going to be smaller, which is going to benefit Democrats. But the early vote data is not so blue that I think we're looking at a totally different electorate. No, it's a couple points bluer on turnout, and persuasion will factor into that too. But like overall, what we're looking at is an electorate that is still pretty Republican. Election day is going to come and go. We're going to see how high turnout is, but almost certainly the election day vote's going to be pretty Republican. That's kind of the rule of thumb here, right? Is Republicans like to vote on election day. So we're already roughly at a Trump plus 5 electorate. And election day votes could bring that up, right? In 2024, election day votes made the district as a whole 14 points redder, roughly, according to this estimate. Even if it's only, getting half of that, like say 7 points redder, we're at a Trump plus 12 electorate. Do we think that Afton Bain, the Democrat, can win a Trump plus 12 electorate? Probably not. I think she would. I think she's going to outrun Kamala Harris. Certainly, I think she's going to do well with persuasion. But can she win a Trump plus 12 electorate? Probably not. And that's an estimate that's probably beneficial. It's probably generous to Afton Bain here. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, right? In terms of just kind of how we're setting up our look at this race. The early vote we've established probably close to Trump plus 5. Election day vote's probably going to bring the total electorate to close to Trump plus 15, if I had to guess. And so the question is Afton Bain going to outrun Kamala Harris by 15 points? Now, this is where national environment comes in, because in 2024, if we look at the district results here, this was Mark Green's seat. He won it by 22% nearly against Megan Barry, right? This was a district that was about 20 points to the right of the country. Donald Trump, or we can do presidentially. Trump won the district by 22% as well. He won the country by about a point and a half. So the district was, let's just call it 21 to the right of the country, close to, between 20 and 21, but we're going to call it 21 to make it simpler. If it's 21 points to the right of the country, right, that means that all else being equal, for Democrats to have exactly a 50% chance of flipping this district from red to blue, we'd have to be in a D plus 21 national environment. Democrats would have to be winning the House popular vote for the presidential election, depending on the year, by 21 points. To put it in perspective, Obama won the presidential popular vote by about 7%. In 2018, Democrats won the House popular vote by under 9%. So you need an environment that is 2.5 times as blue as 2018 for Democrats to be winning this electorate, right? Like this Trump plus 2022 electorate, roughly. Obviously, that doesn't take into account factors like candidate quality, but that's kind of a good way to kind of like conceptualize it in your brain if you're wondering what this would take. Now, to be fair, as I've talked about, the electorate is going to be a bit bluer than 2024, and I think that Afton Bain has run a solid campaign. She's raised a decent amount of money for a special election. She's gotten some help from Democrats. Kamala Harris actually went, to Nashville. So she certainly had some help here that is a little, actually, I would say unique for candidates running in special elections in districts that are usually pretty safe. So that's something worth considering. But here's what I really want to get at, because I know we're talking about, like a lot of numbers and whatnot, but like this is what I want to say. If we are assuming that we are at an electorate that's going to vote for Trump by 15 points, the national environment is going to help Afton Bain a little bit. It's going to help her insofar as moderate, swing voters who genuinely aren't super partisan towards one direction or the other, they're probably going to swing towards her. In 2024, we saw Trump did pretty well with these voters. There were a number, especially across the country, or I should just broadly across the country, really. There were a number of, like empirical, like, okay, these are precincts where there were a lot of Biden 2020 voters that voted for Trump in 2024. Tennessee was no exception. I wouldn't say that Nashville was like the hotbed of that, but it certainly was, was present there. And I think some of those voters we can expect to swing back to Democrats both this year and in 2026. Because, again, usually swing voters, they tend to punish the party in power during these elections. And that's what happened in 2018, and it happened to an extent in 2022, although to a smaller degree, I think in part because of the Dobbs decision. So even though this is a Trump plus 15 voting electorate, like once we factor in the fact that Democrats are probably going to have a bit of a turnout advantage here, I would argue that there's still room for Afton Bain to gain. She can still probably gain a couple points just off shaving, kind of doing better with moderate voters than Kamala Harris did. So that's kind of where it ends, though, and that's why I'm still confident to a pretty large degree that Matt Van Epps, the Republican, is going to win this race. Now, I've talked a lot about this race kind of from the perspective of Afton Bain, because she's the underdog, and because I think that Democrats in particular have been really excited about seeing how this is going to pan out. But like, Matt Van Epps, who I also think has run a pretty solid campaign. Um, he really only needs he needs one of three things to go right. He needs it's one of three. It's not he doesn't need to go 3 for 3. He just needs one of these things to happen. He needs there to be either a high election day turnout, uh, for the early vote data to not be wildly off based on the calculations that I'm using from VoteHub, or he needs uh, moderate swing voters, kind of voters in the middle that we just talked about, to not swing wildly towards Afton Bain. If three of those three things happen, then yeah, this race is going to be close. But like, um, and they'd have to happen to a very serious degree. Like we would need to see a really really low election day turnout. We need to see this model being like close to Harris plus 3, then Trump plus 5, and we need to see a huge exodus of moderate voters away from Republicans. So yeah, it's like in the realm of possibility, but is it likely? No, not at all. And so if all three of those things happen, then Matt Van Epps would lose. If even one of those three things happens, one of those three things alone is not enough to make this race go away from Republicans. And again, this is a Trump plus 22 seat. It isn't as red as the seats up in Knoxville or down in Chattanooga, but it is certainly it's a Trump plus 22 seat. And so my prediction, I think Republicans are going to hold this one by about 11 or 12. Again, I think an assumption of a Trump plus 14 to Trump plus 15 electorate is reasonable. I think we're going to get a little bit of turnout or a little bit of persuasion on election day that's going to benefit Democrats more so than 2024. But Republicans, Matt Van Epps, I think, is a fine candidate. This seat is very red. And when we look at kind of just the map of how this district works, yes, I do expect turnout to fall in these rural counties out here. But we do know that in Davidson, in Williamson in particular, these are the two largest counties in the district just by a vote total. We do know that there's some kind of level of down ballot lag. Donald Trump did not do too well in the suburbs of Nashville, either in any of his three runs, but he usually runs a bit behind other Republican candidates, like, for example, Mark Green, who did a little bit better in Davidson County than Trump did, although he did a little bit worse in rural areas, so it's a bit of a trade-off. But the point I'm making here is that, yes, there will be some, I think, favorable trends for Democrats across the district, but Democrats would need a huge overperformance in the suburbs they just haven't had even in the Trump years, right? Like, think about the elections Democrats have done well in this year. In New Jersey and Virginia, yeah, they did, to the credit of Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger, they did well. Sherrill did well in Morris County, the suburban county in north central Jersey. Sherrill did well in Loudoun County, which is near D.C., okay? But in New Jersey, the swing did not come from Morris County. It came more from the working class areas and the areas that were majority Hispanic and majority Black that had swung, or in majority Asian especially, that had swung way against Kamala Harris last year. So Sherrod didn't necessarily expand into the suburbs as much as she did rebuild the Democratic coalition. And the same goes for Democrats to a greater extent, right? Like look at the special elections in Iowa in those legislative districts. Democrats did not win those races because they had a huge suburban revolt against Republicans. They won them because they're doing a lot better in rural areas, right? Which are not areas that have been trending blue. So yes, Democrats, I think, are going to do fine in Williamson County and Davidson County, but I think they lack kind of the ceiling that they have in other special elections, just because these are more suburban, more recently left trending than, say, parts of like New Jersey that have gotten redder, or parts of Iowa that have gotten redder. Right? It is easier to kind of snap back, like in the short term, than it is to pull forward, if that makes sense. And Democrats have to do a lot of pulling forward in Nashville in a way they didn't have to do in, say, Newark, New Jersey, or in rural Iowa, where Obama used to do really well, but Kamala Harris did not do well. So that's what I think. Again, it's possible this race is a lot closer than I'm expecting. I think my prediction is going to be a bit more favorable to Republicans than the conventional wisdom is at this point. I'm still predicting a double-digit win for Matt Van Epps. I think it's going to be about a 10 to 11 point swing from 2024, which is still good for Democrats. It's still a really good result for them, but a lot of people think it's going to be like a 5-point race, and I just don't see that. So come back tomorrow. We'll see how I land, but I feel comfortable by predicting a victory of around 11 points really for Matt Van Epps. So thanks for watching. If you live in Tennessee's 7th district and you haven't already voted, go out and do your civic duty today. We're blessed to live in a country that lets us vote and have this opportunity. So that is my final word of advice to you all. With that being said, I'll be here either tomorrow or on Thursday morning to review what happens, whatever happens in Tennessee's 7th District Tuesday night.